Welcome back, everyone. Let's talk about my Scream franchise ranking. Now, Scream, I rewatched the first four again, seen them millions of times. Haven't seen them in like 2 or 3 years since Wes Craven passed in 2015. I have not seen them since. Even though I watched them a dozen times before that, and I do love this franchise, but it had been a good 3 years since I've seen these films, and I just haven't rewatched them since because I've seen them so many times. And I'm so glad I got this channel so I can actually talk about these films again because I do love rewatching movies that I watched so many times, and sometimes I just forget. If I don't watch them for a long time, I kind of forget about them. And this is a franchise where I did forget about how great this franchise is. This franchise, I think, is really, really awesome. Even though it gets criticism because it's like a lot of people criticize it, but like anything, people criticize about everything. People just love to be negative and be spiteful about everything. So I'm going to try not to be like that, and I'm going to actually be positive. Now, the Scream films, before I tell you my rankings, every one of these films I enjoy. I don't hate any of them. There are a couple I love. There are a couple I think are fine, but I don't hate any. So this is a good franchise. And it's only four, so it's like there's not like a million of them to really. It's not like the Hellraiser films or like the Friday the 13th films where there are so many of them where it's like there's got to be a bad one in that batch, and usually with those franchises there are. So I like how this one is just a solid four movies, and I don't know if we're gonna get any more because we've got the Scream TV show, which I haven't seen on MTV, and Wes Craven passed in 2015, so I don't know if they're gonna do another one that is not with Wes Craven, of course. So, but if they do, I wouldn't be against them doing another Scream film. Like if they did another one and they had somebody else direct it, I wouldn't be pissed about it. And honestly, I wonder if Wes Craven would have wanted that anyways. I mean, it is his baby, these movies, but like they could be done by somebody else too as well. They just won't have the Wes Craven charm since he's not with us anymore. But so what I'm saying is this franchise, I really enjoy this franchise. I really enjoy how there's only four of them, and I think they're all either pretty okay or all right to really, really good. So we'll start it with my number four, which is Scream 3. Oh, and spoilers for every movie. Scream 3. Now, this is the one that is my least favorite on the lines, and Scream 4 has issues with this as well, where this one and Scream 4 are not, like, in terms of the first two, they are feel like they're very parody in a lot of ways. Like, Scream 3, like, being the third Scream movie, where it's so meta to where there are murders happening on the film set of the movie Stab 3 in this movie. And we've got these actors who are playing these characters in the Stab 3 movie who are getting killed off by the script, but these characters are so uninteresting, and I feel like they're the most uninteresting characters out of the whole franchise. All of these characters are forgettable, the ones that are part of the Stab 3 movie. So it is unfortunate that, like, I don't care for any of these characters. And this movie, in my opinion, felt like a parody of the Scream movies, like 1 and 2. Like, in terms of it's way more humorous, but they had so many issues because this movie was being scripted and being going to be filmed right around the Columbine murder. So this had it could have been like the first two in terms of like violence, in terms of like how the first two are. But this one put a bigger emphasis on humor and a bigger emphasis on not having as much violence because of the Columbine murders. So, and originally there was a totally different script where like Matthew Lillard would have came back as Stu Macher as the killer. So it really would have been a different movie. It's just we unfortunately had the Columbine murders. So it's like they couldn't show that much violence in this time period because it just happened, unfortunately, during this movie. And Wes Craven was so shocked and mad that like he couldn't get what he wanted out of this movie because he wanted to make it more violent, but because of the real life violence, people think that movies always interpret real life violence, which I don't think that's totally the case all the time. It could be the case sometimes, but not all the time. I feel like a majority of the time people just like to blame something that is out of their control, like movies. and say, oh, this is because we see people killing people on movies. That means that they're doing this in real life because of that. Which a lot of times that case is debunked, so I don't know, I think that's stupid. Like, people are just crazy, and it's unfortunate, but this movie is, like, the things I dislike about it, like I said, is that the characters are not that interesting, that are part of the Stab 3 movie. Dewey and Gale are alright, but they're kind of in the background more in this one than the other ones, and like I said, it's not that gory or violent, and it's not, because again, it was during an unfortunate time this was being made, so they couldn't do that, or the studio didn't want that. But the positives I can give this movie is that Sidney Prescott, like always, is fantastic. Roman Bridger is a good, he is a good villain. He is honestly, even though they do the retcon thing where it's like he's never been mentioned before in any of these movies, and then in this one he's revealed to be the half-brother of Sidney. His story, like, was really good. Like, he actually had, like, this, again, like the first two movies, like Billy Loomis and Mrs. Loomis, they both were out for revenge. He was out for revenge too. Out for revenge against Sidney, who literally had the life he wanted. He wanted this life. But his mother, Maureen, Sidney's mother too, threw him out the door. Like, literally, he went up to her 4 years before the first film happened and said, like, I'm your kid. And she just threw him away, like, because she already had a daughter and a husband. And it's a great villain. I really liked Roman in this. Like, I thought he was good, and I thought that everything that made him a killer, I thought, worked really well. And it just was really sad to see how this character goes to these extreme lengths because of loss, like losing, not having a mother, like not having a family. And then whenever he goes up to his mother, she denies him. So it's a really good villain. I really liked Roman in this movie, and I liked how it resolved everything from the first two movies. Like, he's the reason everything happened in all these movies, the first three, and he's really good. Cindy Prescott, I love again, even though she's not in it as much as the other ones. I love that she's in hiding after the second film because 4 killers have been after her. Like, she's literally goes into hiding, does witness protection. She just does a job where she's on a phone all the time, like a self-help job to help other people, which is a cool thing to do for a person who has been suffering through literally losing all her friends, almost all her family, except for Dewey and Gale. And in this one, she comes out of hiding because Ghostface finds her at her house, so she eventually makes it into the movie, but whenever she's in the movie, it's really good. And I love how she has the completed story arc with her and her mother and her brother, because it does fully come full circle with Roman and her mother. So I really love that plot between her and Roman and Maureen, but the other characters are just so uninteresting and so bland. So that's why this is, and because of the scenes that felt like parody to me, like how Jay and Silent Bob are literally in this movie, and it doesn't make any sense. It's like, so that you're saying that the Jay and Silent Bob movies exist in this universe too? And the scene with Carrie Fisher, that's not Carrie Fisher, but it's Carrie Fisher playing another person that looks like her, and she's like, no, I'm not Carrie Fisher. The real Carrie Fisher had to sleep with George Lucas to get the job of Star Wars, but I look just like her. Like, it's so dumb that, like, they do that. Like, I don't get that joke. It's just so bad. And just, like I said, the other characters are just bland and uninteresting, and Parker Posey is annoying, and I hate saying that because I'd feel bad ragging on this actress. But I think she knows she's purposefully acting like this. Like, that's what she was trying to be. She's trying to be naggy, but it rubs me the wrong way. So these characters are uninteresting. It has a lot of parody to it. It felt like a spoof of the other two movies in a lot of ways. But I did love Sidney. I did love Roman. I did love her and their story with the mother, like connecting it all full circle. But the other characters are so uninteresting, and it felt like a parody movie in a lot of ways. So that's why Scream 3 is my number 4. Even though it has a lot of great things about it, it has some of the worst things about it in the franchise. Now my number 3 is Scream 4. Now Scream 4 is one where I definitely love all the characters more, even if some of them are just repeats of the first film, because this is a reboot in terms of it is the fourth sequel, but since this is out in 2011 when reboots were the craze, Wes Craven did a smart idea where these characters will be just like the first film, and it's a reboot where Sidney Prescott is dealing with going back to Woodsboro, and her cousin Jill, who is her age from the first movie, is dealing with a ghost-faced killer now. And I love that idea, and I think that's just, again, another clever thing that Wes Craven does. In all the films, he does it pretty cleverly with how they use these killers and their motives. And I love how this one, the ending of this movie, I think, is fantastic. But the characters, though, are fine. They're better than 3. I really love Kirby. I think that Sidney Dewey and Gale are great. Jill, whenever she's revealed to be one of the killers, is fantastic. Emma Roberts just blew me away in this movie. Jill, I think, is the scariest killer of all of them, and she's the shortest one. Like, it's funny how she's the smallest killer out of all of them, and she is the scariest because she is this brat, like this literal teenage brat who literally murders everybody, including her own family, just to get fame and fortune. And because we're living in a time where you don't have to do anything to become famous anymore, which is a line she says in the movie. And she literally kills just to frame people to look like the victim, so she will come out and become famous and not have to do anything in life to gain anything. That is scary, and I feel no sympathy for her. I felt sympathy for Billy, Mrs. Loomis, and Roman, but I don't feel any sympathy for Jill at all. And I think that's why that makes her, I think, I might say, the best villain out of all of them, because I feel nothing for her. I feel like she is a horrible human being. The other 3, you can at least feel sympathy for why they're killing people. This one, she is just a brat who is murdering just to become famous. That pisses me off so much. So Jill, just, God, like, she makes me so mad. This character makes me angry physically. Like, I just get so furious watching her in this movie, and I love how this can give me a response like that. And she's great. I love that. I love how Sydney has, again, a full arc with, like, her and coming back to Woodsboro, her figuring out that it's her cousin who is her age from the first one now, and she is repeating the same movie. Like, they're filming the murders literally on cameras, and they're gonna upload them and trace it back to her boyfriend Trevor. And I love how Sydney has to fight again and stop her cousin, like another person she's related to. I just think that's cool that she always has to deal with these family members or boyfriends or brothers. Like, she has to deal with family, and it makes it so hard on this character. But again, Neve Campbell is fantastic in this as well, like she is in all the other ones. So the main 3, Sidney, Dewey, and Gale, are great like before. Jill is fantastic when the reveal happens. The rest of the movie, she's fine. And Kirby is my favorite character in the movie, though. Like, she oozes cool. She's just gorgeous. She's got a great attitude. She's so fun. Like, Hayden Panettiere gives such an incredible performance in this movie. Like, she reminds me of Randy from the first 2 Scream movies, but she honestly just gives him a run for her money, just in how she is so sly and so cool. Like, she's such a cool character. Like, and not a dorky character like Randy. And I like Randy, but I just think that she is a awesome character. Love Kirby. So 4 has a lot of dumb humor in it, like 3. It didn't feel like parody, but it has, well, actually, no, it does feel like a spoof in a lot of ways. This one, too, like 3 and 4 have that issue where this one feels like a spoof as well. Whenever Anthony Anderson, as this cop, gets stabbed in the head, he starts walking, which can actually happen. You can actually get stabbed in the head, and somebody did walk to the hospital, and that's why Wes Craven got that idea from. But Anthony Anderson gets stabbed in the head, starts walking, then he starts to tip like he's going to fall over. And they were talking about Bruce Willis earlier, him and Adam Brody's character. So right before he dies, he just says, "Fuck Bruce Willis," and then he dies. And then they said earlier in the movie, like, this new generation, it's like with the rules from the last set of movies, it's like in this one, literally the only thing you could be now is you have to be gay to survive. And then there's that Robbie character, and whenever he's about to get killed, he says to Ghostface, like, I'm gay. Does that help? And then he just gets stabbed, and it's humor like that where I just felt like it was over the top. Like it just didn't. I mean, it fits with the other movies, but I felt like the other movies, the first two, did it way more subtly. Like I don't know. Like it's just like in Scream 3, whenever Randy comes back in that video and he recites like these are the rules to the ending conclusion of a trilogy. Like I felt like that was way more over the top than the first two, and I feel like Scream 3 and Scream 4 have that problem. They really do, and it just annoys me that they feel very much parody in a lot of ways. But like I said, the characters are really the main characters. Sydney, Dewey, Gale, Kirby, and Jill are incredible. Love them all. But the other characters are alright. They're just copies of the first one. But Jill and Kirby, I felt like gave different performances than the first one, of course, because of what Jill is at the end, and Kirby just is sly and cool. And and overall, like this is a more violent movie than 3, but this didn't have any horrific like life altering like murder case at the same time like 3 did. But like this one's brutal. It's funny in some points, but at some points it's not funny. It's kind of parody, like I said, with some of those scenes, like the fuck Bruce Willis scene, like that. But I think this is a really solid sequel. Like I love Jill. I think she is really one of the best villains out of all of them. I think that Sydney, Dewey, and Gale, Kirby are awesome. Like it's got some great characters, but it just has some parody stuff in it, like the last one. So it's not my least favorite, but because of I felt like it was overall more interesting than 3, but this one still is closer to 3 than the first two. So overall, this one is number 3, and I do really enjoy it despite some issues with it. Now, number 2 is Scream 1. Now, Scream 1 is really, it's the one that started it all. It's the first one that started it all, and you could say it's the best one. And I do love this one. I do love the fact that this is really clever, and people always get annoyed at like the meta aspect of this, and to me it's like 3 and 4 are more annoying. This one does have a lot of references to horror. It does. It's trying to be that. That's what it's trying to be. But it didn't feel like parody as much as 3 and 4 did. This one I felt like was truly in a lot of ways scary. Like it's the scariest one. The opening scene is one of the best opening scenes in any horror movie, and probably any movie ever. Like in a lot of ways, like that is one of the coolest, scariest, goriest scenes I've ever seen in an opening, like for a modern, like a blockbuster horror movie. Just incredible. And the fact that Drew Barrymore was going to be the main character, but then she said, no, I'll just have myself killed off at the beginning, so then it'll be such a surprise for whoever sees this. They'll be like, what? Kill off a big star like that? It's like Janet Leigh got killed off in Psycho. I love that, and opening scene's incredible. The rest of the movie is awesome as well, really great. The first story with Sydney and her mother dealing with that while dealing with the killer around somewhere killing off her friends. Always awesome. And this one is really good, but I felt like the next one I talk about did it more interestingly. And overall, this has really fantastic acting too, as well. And the killer's reveals and motives is really good. Like Billy, just how his mother left him, and his father slept with Sydney's mother, who slept with everybody in town, and Sydney's denying that, and everybody's telling her that while she's dealing with grief of her mother who died literally a year before in this movie. Having a new killer, having Billy Loomis kill because of revenge against his mother leaving him, and his father sleeping with Sydney's mother. Like, I love that. Like, I just think that's really good. And it gives him a motive, but it just, you felt for this character. And all the characters are fun, they're humorous, they're fun, they've got genuine acting. They feel really fun overall. It's a really fun horror movie with just a fantastic opening scene, a fantastic final girl who stays fantastic through all of them. Great characters, great interesting characters, great acting for a horror movie too, and it's 2 hours long, so it does a great job of building on these characters, and I never get bored through this one or the next one after this. So I really love this one, and just overall, really a great one. With everything about it is fantastic. One of the best in the franchise. Now, Scream 2 is my number one. Now, this is one where people. I notice sometimes people with this at the lowest on their ranking, and I'm like, how on earth? Like, in my opinion, how do you do that? Like, I don't think that this is the worst at all. Honestly, it was a tad difference to put between the first Scream and Scream 2 as my number one, because Scream 2, I feel like, in terms of upping the ante, in terms of building these characters more, in terms of intensity, in terms of action, like, I thought this one it did way better. And I was talking to Derek from Derek Tour Corner about it, that this is like an action sequel in some ways, and it reminded me of like Alien to Aliens. Like, it ups the ante, but it makes it better. Like, these characters are just as good as the last one, but Sydney, I love the fact that in the second movie, Sydney is dealing with the grief of the first movie, but then dealing with another killer, losing all her friends again in the process. But she becomes stronger, becomes a bigger badass because of that. Like that line, whenever the killer is revealed, Mickey and Mrs. Loomis, whenever she's talking to Mickey and he's talking about Billy Loomis, she says, well, you know, you didn't know one thing about Billy Loomis. And he just says, what's that? And she said, I fucking killed him. And then she just like, just hits him with like her necklace that Dare gave her. And like, just beats him up. Like, I love that. She's such a badass character. And I felt like this one was the best one for her character. I felt like, even though 3 resolved really fantastically well with her character, I thought in this one, she's just incredible. That scene whenever she's talking to Gus, the theater director, about like the play they're doing, and how this character in the play, I'm blanking on the name of the play that she's doing, but the character in the play, the theater teacher was saying she lost everything. She knew she foresaw the war, she foresaw the torture, but she stood up and rose above it. And then the line where he says to Sydney, like, say I'm a fighter, and Sydney says it, and he says, I don't believe you. And then she says it again, and he's like, okay, I kind of believe you. That was a great acted scene, and just always gets me. Because Sydney is a fighter. Like, she's this character who goes through so much shit. And I felt like this one did the best with her building on becoming this literal warrior. Like, she is badass, and she's just such a fantastic character. And I love how what happens to her in this movie. And I love how Cotton Weary is involved in this movie. Like, in the first one, he's only seen in like one scene in a camera footage a year before in the movie. And in this one, he wants to have his case solved. Like, he wants to be able to be free fully of like being convicted of being a killer, because he wasn't. So I love that it makes him look like a killer, and I love how in the end he's the one who saves the day. Sydney needed help too, and I love that he saved the day. And he was just, Liev Schreiber is fantastic in this. And the reveal of the killers. Mickey is great. He's like Stu Macher, but it's scarier in a lot of ways. Even though Stu Macher was awesome too, and he was hilarious, but this Mickey is really scary. And then the killer, who's the main killer, is Mrs. Loomis, Billy's mother, which honestly, going into this the first time, I should have just caught that. Like, who would be the killer in the second movie? The mother, who taking revenge against the loss of her son. And Laurie Metcalf is incredible as Mrs. Loomis. She is scary. Like, she is literally scary, or legitimately scary. She terrifies me. So I loved her in this movie. I loved all the characters. They were all fun. They were all interesting. This had more of an action and a character build-up. Even though the first one has a lot of character build-up and plot, this one had a great thing with Sydney standing up more and becoming more of a character than the first one. Because the first one, even though it's fantastic, she's breaking down the most of the movie because she's dealing with killings while dealing with the death of her mother a year later, like whenever it's literally a year anniversary. So in this one, she stands up, and it makes sense in the second movie in like a trilogy, where it's like the first movie she's learning everything, she's trying to figure out what to do, and in the second one she's standing up for herself. She knows what the case is. Now she's gonna fight with the second killer on the loose. And I just loved all these characters. They were all fun, they were all memorable. Honestly, I think they're just as memorable as the first one. Hallie, Derek, Cece, like all these characters, Mickey, like, and Randy, of course, back in the first one. They're all memorable. They're all fun. They're all entertaining. And Codden, they're just all great. Dewey and Gale are great as well. I just thought this was the best one because it was just so incredibly entertaining and these characters were so great. Sydney just had a great story arc in this one. The kills are good. I love how it's a sequel that's not over the top like 2 and 3, but it's like almost to a point where you could say that, but it's not. Because it's doing a movie within a movie thing with Stab 1, like making the movie after the first Scream movie. And the opening kill is great with Jada Pinkett. Really great scene. So I love this overall. I think this one is the most watchable, has the most character moments that I love, has a lot of brutal kills, has some good action, it has just great everything. I think this is overall just really entertaining. One of the best horror sequels ever, and I know people think, oh, horror sequels, they usually suck. But this one I think is one of the best, and literally to be made a year, like to be made and finished a year after the first film. The first film came out in 96, this came out in 97. That's incredible. An incredible feat that like you can make a second film a year later and make it just as good or even better. Even though people disagree with me, but people disagree about everything. So this is my opinion. This is what I feel. So yeah, I love Scream 2. Just incredible sequel. So rewatching this film, yeah, my number 4 is of course Scream 3, then Scream 4, then Scream 1, then Scream 2. And like I said, Scream 1 and Scream 2 were kind of close, but it doesn't matter. I think they're both fantastic, but this one is Scream 2 is the more interesting and more watchable. Even though the first one I paid attention and was interested all the way through, I felt like this one just had a better character like arcs and better like more tension in it. I felt like this one just did a better job, and I love them both. So yeah, this franchise, I don't hate any of them. I thought 3 was okay, 4 was a little better, than 1 and 2 are fantastic. So I love this franchise. And rewatching them, I'm so glad I got this channel so I can rewatch them again and talk about them, because there's so many things I love to talk about with these. If you didn't watch my full reviews on Scream 1, 2, 3, and 4, go check those out if you're interested. So thanks guys for watching my ranking of the Scream franchise.